Hey, Rob, welcome to the Get in the Mode podcast.
David, what's up? It's so good to see you. Thanks for having me. You are the best.
Part of the entrepreneurial life is like we sacrifice a lot of things, and you're kind of number one. Let me ask you, what are the things that you end up sacrificing? If you're an entrepreneur or a C-suite leader at the top, what are the pitfalls you've seen?
Your health, your mental health, your physical health, your relationships. There's 5 traits. Actually, somebody that I know very well that works with entrepreneurs said something to me, and I like to share it, whenever I can. And that is that he had noticed in all the work that he does that there's these 5 common traits of entrepreneurs, and they may have one, they may have more than one, or they might have all 5, but they have high or severe anxiety. They have experienced some sort of trauma in their life. They have depression. They've been bankrupt, or they're on the verge of bankruptcy, but nobody knows, or they have some sort of addiction. And those are about 5 traits. And as I make my way through, I've been an entrepreneur for 31 years, and I see it all the time. It's 1, 2, or all 5 for so many entrepreneurs. But we have this suit of armor up, and nobody can see through it. So it's all good on the outside.
I kind of picked out some disciplines that I think our audience might benefit from. I was picking out the second one where you're talking about, take time off, right? Retreat. Oftentimes, so there's 2 types of retreat. I want to differentiate. One is kind of like a retreat with a goal to unplug, perhaps it could be by yourself. You could go on a journaling exercise, self-discovery. So that's one style of retreat. The other one is sort of like, perhaps, I think you organize a retreat event too, where you actually are in the company of others, or perhaps your teammates. You can include some key members from your team. I'm more curious about the first type, right? What are some ways, and I think you're talking about both in that discipline, and it's important to have both. I'm curious, what are some practices that you can incorporate to unplug and kind of go on a retreat? What does that look like?
Well, let me first clarify one thing, because in discipline number 2, which is the discipline you're speaking of, take time off, that retreat can be part of that, but we recommend that you take 130 days off per year and don't think about work the entire day. But that doesn't necessarily mean you're completely unplugged and off the grid and away from it. It's just you're not doing anything work related. But let me answer your question as it relates to retreat. And it's something I'm very familiar with and very experienced with. The retreat I host is actually a retreat in silence. It's a bunch of leaders from around the world that come together and spend 5 days, of which 2.5 are in complete silence. The whole time that you're there, we encourage that you turn your phone and all your connection to the outside world off. But we don't demand or there's no rule, because you have to be the judge of what's best for you. But this is what we do. And, when we take time to unplug and actually be in silence, which may seem extreme for many people, but let me just explain for a minute why it's valuable. You really haven't been in silence pretty much since you were born. It's been busy, since the moment you came out of the womb, and people were cleaning you up and getting you ready for life, and then your parents, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But a really unique thing happens when you are in silence. And that is that your mind slows down, and you start to see things with a greater awareness. Your sense of awareness goes up. And that shows you what the mind is capable of, because it's there for you each and every moment of each and every day. But because we're busy, it's hard to feel into it, to notice it. But when we're silent, it's amazing how somebody finds two squirrels playing around in the leaves like it was the best TV show they ever watched in, their whole life. Why is that? It's because you have a new awareness that you just felt into. You just noticed. And that's there for us each and every moment. And so by doing a retreat like that, when you go back to your busy life, you can tap into that feeling and you can bring it out when you're on the busy streets of Denver, and you can notice the beauty all around you and the miracle of everything that you see, smell, touch, hear, all of it.
I want to get to one more discipline. It's say no more often. So sometimes we have, as leaders and entrepreneurs, we want to be helpful and like we want to solve problems, and we get into this mode of like, oh yeah, we say yes to a lot of things. I'm curious. First, I'll let you kind of respond to what you mean no more off, NO, not the NOW, but right. No more off, saying no more often. And then I have a follow-up to that. So maybe I'll, have you kind of define that a little.
Yeah. So say no often is discipline number 6. And that's where we encourage people to say no to everything that doesn't fit into the first 5 disciplines. And we went through like 3 of them. So you're your listeners can kind of pick up on it. But it's hard to say no, as you mentioned, but it can be quite impactful and powerful when you do. And so this is where you begin to get really clear about doing the things that matter most in your life. It means you don't have FOMO. You're not afraid to miss out on that meeting, or, what if I would do this and I better do that? Because if you really start adding it up and look at the time and energy spent on all these activities that we say yes to, you're probably not spending your time in the right places based on maybe where you want to go in your life. And so this is the beginning point of where you begin to understand what to say no to. Once you get clear about what to say no to, you practice it, and you won't be perfect at it. Do a little bit at a time. For example, if you said no to just 25% of the things that you've been saying yes to, you just saved yourself 25%. I mean, who knows how many hours you just saved yourself. And it's only a quarter of the time now that you're saying no instead of 100% of the time. One of the gauges that you can look to is it giving you energy? So say you see a meeting on your calendar and you go, oh, why did I say yes to that? There's an indicator for the future. Never say yes to something like that again. So you're just constantly learning, constantly honing in on it. And you'll get very good at it, and it'll feel good. And the last thing, and my Enneagram, by the way, speaking of the profiling tools, is I'm a number 3 and a number 2. So I'm a helper and an achiever. So when somebody asks me, I definitely want to say yes. And then I want to go all in on it. So I help them achieve whatever it is the issue is. So I have to be really mindful around this. But in saying no, I still want to help. So you can make recommendations like, oh, I'm sorry, I can't do that, but let me introduce you to this person, or this is a great resource that you might find helpful, those types of things. So you always leave them with, you're still giving, you're just not giving of all your time.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for listening to that clip from the Get in the Mode podcast. To watch the full episode of the podcast, click the link in the show description. Also, consider subscribing to the Get in the Mode YouTube channel to directly see new episodes on your YouTube feed.